right, so we are moving on to Unit 4, which is managing an OS. And for the last couple of days, we've been talking a lot about Linux. And I want you, really, you're going to need to know Linux a little bit better for cybersecurity. But it's important to see how Linux does things versus how Windows does. And you'll see after this unit or this module why people in the business world want their users to have Windows, and that's because it makes things easy. Windows makes it easy to make configuration file changes. It has a beautiful, graphical user interface. We have Windows 11 coming out, which is even more modernized. And sometimes, as you guys saw on the Linux side, you get a terminal. It's not really all that exciting unless the user wants to do all their own configuration. But for a normal user that's like a secretary at a desk, it makes sense for them most times to just have a Windows machine. So we'll be able to compare and contrast kind of the differences between Linux as well as Linux and Microsoft. So our end goal today is to use the GUI and command line management interfaces to configure an operating system. I believe there's 2 labs that are in CompTIA, and then there's the 3 Windows fundamentals. And that should take us until Friday, where we're going to watch a documentary. We'll either watch a documentary or we'll do, I'm thinking we might watch Hackers. We'll see. Hackers is like the OG hacking movie, and I feel like we need to get that early on. And we want to explore the importance of access control features and make up user accounts, because that's what you guys are going to be doing, especially if you work for a SOHO, which is a small office, kind of home office area, so a small business. You're going to have to know how to create local user accounts. So to get started, you have these things called management interfaces, and if you've done anything on your personal computer, you might have been into some of these, or if you've heard of the registry, or going into command line on Windows, you might have kind of experienced them before. But these are more advanced tools that you have access to, and they're usually buried pretty deep within the operating system. It's not something that you're going to have a shortcut on your desktop that says, hey, here's a link to go blow up your computer and nuke your computer. These things they tend to be pretty well hidden. So a couple of the key ones that you need to know about is Control Panel. Control Panel on Windows. They also have Windows settings. With Windows 10, there's like 30 different places that you can change settings, I swear. And they don't have the same stuff. It's very confusing with Control Panel and Windows settings. In times like that, search is going to be your best bet. If you don't know exactly where the setting is, just use search and it'll get you there. But Control Panel is what we've had back since Windows maybe 98. Windows XP for sure, we had Control Panel. And Control Panel was where you were able to make all changes with a computer. So if you needed to change settings like network settings, sound settings, video settings, all that stuff was found in the Control Panel. But with Windows 10 and now Windows 11, what they've done is they've kind of dumbed it down even more, and that's Windows settings, because your users are getting better with devices. You guys, for example, are what are called digital natives. You've had technology your whole entire life, right? So this is not new to you, and you're used to going into your settings on your phone and making changes. So Microsoft had to give those power users, or it's kind of the new normal user, access to some of these settings, and that's why Windows settings was kind of born. It's a kind of watered down, but there still are quite a few settings in there. Computer management, and all of these, like as you use them more and more, you'll find they have run commands, because in IT, every minute that you're sitting in front of a computer is time that you're not working on that next ticket. And when you're doing entry-level help desk stuff, it's all about how many tickets you can close and how fast you are. Okay, and obviously, the accuracy. You don't just want to close the ticket if it's not fixed. But you'll learn some of these run commands. For example, if you type Windows key R on your Windows computer, that'll bring up the run command, and then you can type in like CMPM. I have to like type it because I'm fast, but there's one for computer management. Regedit is the registry editor. You'll learn all of those things when you're working on Windows machines. But computer management has task scheduler. Remember in Linux Fundamentals 3 when we had to like do that cron tab thing and edit text, text files, and have to figure out the cron timing, and there's wildcards and different lines meant different things. Super confusing, right? I mean, they have special websites set up just to get cron timing. That's how convoluted it is to set up tasks. In Windows, we can go to Task Scheduler and we can say, hey, I want to do this, this backup every night, and it's a graphical user interface where you can just hit next a few times and it's there. So Task Scheduler, Event Viewer. So if you want to see, what's going on the computer, Event Viewer will show all the different things. If there's an error, if there was any security issues, things like that, that's your log viewer. Now on Linux, we had to go. Who remembers where logs are stored on Linux? Yeah, in var/logs, and then we had, if it's a web server, we had to go into the Apache folder. There's, all these different logs. Where here, it's all in one place. We can quickly go and see in computer management all those log files. There's disk management, device manager, all those things are within computer management. And then these are actually smaller tools within there. For example, device manager, you can go and do, I want to say DEV MGMT, and that'll bring up the device manager. They're all small tools within the management console. On the bottom is the registry editor. So this is where you can really screw up your computer. So I definitely urge you, if you do want to play with a registry, do it on a virtual machine, not like your regular machine that you're going to kill, because you can go in and change absolutely every setting with Windows, with different software. These are all the core configuration files, and they're all like small text files that are in there, and that's the registry. Now on Linux, everything's a file. You're changing these files, you're doing it through the command line. Here, at least in the registry, you're going through and going to control panel, and then you'll see all the different settings. So today during the lab, don't just follow it step by step by step. If you get a chance, open up the registry and go through there and make sense of it. Try to figure out, okay, what is HKey local machine versus HKey local user? Why are there two? They're very similar. What effect does it have on the system? Because the more you understand how it works, the better you're going to be at troubleshooting how to fix it. In Windows, we also have the regular command prompt, like you guys are used to seeing. You can bring that up by hitting the command or the Windows key R and then typing in CMD. That'll bring up your command line. But we also have PowerShell. PowerShell is a very, very, there's not really a better way to say it, but a very powerful shell that has so much stuff built in to automate processes. There are certifications, there are just full-time jobs for PowerShell because it is so widely used in the IT, especially in the sysadmin stuff. But it allows you to do scripts. There's a lot of pre-done PowerShell scripts that are out there. If you enjoy scripting, when we do we're going to do some bash scripting stuff. But if you enjoy that and you want to learn PowerShell, I have a couple resources for PowerShell in cybersecurity. The conference that I'm going to in 2 weeks, there was a 2-day, so 16-hour training on using just PowerShell as a security professional. So again, that's definitely something that I would be spending time on. And we talked about Linux configuration files. Everything is a file on Linux. So Task Manager shows us everything that is going on the computer. What was the Linux tool that did this? Who remembers? That showed all the processes. What was it? It was Top, exactly. It's the same thing, and honestly, they look identical. Obviously, this is colorful, but the headings are pretty much the same. What's using CPU? What's using memory? So you can come in here, and it'll tell you some really important information. Number one, this Microsoft Edge is at 49% of the CPU usage. Of our usage, this is 49% of it. So if our computer's running slow, then we know, hey, this is probably using a lot of it. Just like here, our disk I/O, our input-output, the throughput that's going to our disk is at 96%. That's not our storage is at 96%, but our actual throughput. So we can kind of keep an eye on this and see what issues we're having, but you'll notice that you can come in here and just end the task as well. So if you open up the Task Manager, you can right-click on it and end task, and that'll kill it immediately. Whereas sometimes if you hit the close button, you might have to sit there and wait, or it'll go white, and you'll have a little spinning thing on Windows. This will just go through and kill that process. What was the command that we used on Linux to kill a process? Sigterm was one, and kill, and if you have kill as well. So this does the same thing, but again from a nice, pretty graphical user interface. Some of you are going to be like, hey, Windows makes this so much harder. I have to open up Task Manager. I have to go find this process. I have to right-click and kill, where I could have just typed in like 3 commands at the command line. You know, some of you are going to be like, I love Windows because I could just open up this graphical thing. I can kind of sort through, right-click, and task. It makes it really easy. That's up to you. Whatever is your style. Neither one of them is correct or incorrect. Myself, I find myself banging my head against the Windows command line because I'm so used to the Linux command line. I wish they added so much more. So it's just, I'm a lot faster when I have the full bash access, the born again shell. Service management. So who knows what a service is? We talked a little bit about it yesterday. Who knows what a service is? Or when do services usually start up? Yeah? Yeah, when the computer boots is when services will start up. And what they do is they support things like networking. Like there's network services that start. There's sound services that start. There are different application like updaters that will start. If you go to service management, which is under computer management, you can actually go through and start, stop, and set when these things can turn on and off. This is somewhere where you're going to have to do some troubleshooting. Okay, you're going to have to know about services and how to stop them or how to see if there's one that's already stopped. So let's say the program ran into an issue, then that service will stop itself. It's going to freak out and be like, I'm not going any longer. And you can go in there and see, hey, this service should be running because I'm trying to get this application, let's say QuickBooks, to run. Right-click on it, start, and then it just fails again and it stops. You know there's an issue with that software, and you can troubleshoot it from there. But almost every application has services of some sort that you'll have to know about. Task Scheduler, like I told you, we talked a little bit about at the beginning. This is what allows you to do backups and things like that, but it can also, programs can also schedule themselves into this. So, for example, Microsoft Office is going to go into Task Scheduler, and it's going to set up a, search for updates. When should it, go out and look for those updates? It'll utilize that as well. So if you want to disable some of those things, then you can go into the Task Scheduler and kind of tool around and get those stopped. What are some other things, or what is the big reason that we as hackers or penetration testers want to know how to use the task scheduler? We talked about it a little bit at the end of class yesterday. Yeah? Yep, absolutely. It'll create that user for you if yours disappears for some reason. And you can create like a small piece of software that is called something very generic like Office Updater or solitaire updates, whatever you want to name it, and have it on the computer. So that way if someone's looking for how do they keep getting in? They keep having these random users and we're like playing the whack-a-mole game, and it's because they're going through here and they're not knowing that there's this Office Updater. It's just spelled a little bit different, or a hyphen or something like that. So that's how it would show up in here. Because you're probably thinking, well, then they'll just go turn off your automated thing. Well, not if you go through and hide it in here and call it Office background space tasks. So then they'll be like, oh, those are just the Office updaters. Okay. So yes, that's what we would want. Or we can have an application that like phones home every so often, so that way we can maintain that connection with that machine. We can have it do the backup, but have it go to our servers instead. So like all of their configuration for their super top secret project they're working on, every night the backup runs, it could back it up to our servers, little things like that. So we haven't really gone too deep into the hardware stuff, but just to talk a little bit about system memory. So system memory on the computer is also called RAM, okay? And they're little sticks about yay big, about that wide, and that's the temporary storage for your computer, because what happens is you make a request. If you remember when we learned data processing, you make that request as far as that input. Well, what if your CPU is super busy? That's where your cache and your system memory are going to come in. And the system memory, I'll hold it there temporarily before it can be shoveled into the CPU. So when that computer gets turned off, that is volatile. Okay? The term volatile means it's going to die. Okay, so as soon as power is lost, it is volatile, it goes away. Now, hard drive storage is the opposite. That's made for long term. It's actually, etched in, if you will, and that's going to be your mass storage. Okay, a lot of people get these confused when they look up a computer and they're like, "Oh, this computer only has 8 gigabytes of RAM. That's not enough storage." Well, those are two different things. One is our volatile, which is sometimes determines the speed of the computer, and the other is mass storage, where you actually have data. And that's because solid state drives, the size of them have kind of come down, and like for entry level computers, so people just see that number and they just automatically think that that's the storage. Because Chromebooks, when they first came out, literally had like 8 gigabytes of storage, 32 gigabytes of storage. So people got really confused. So mass storage hangs around even when the power is turned off. RAM or system memory is volatile, and it does not hang around. So when it comes to memory management, if you're wondering what is hogging your RAM, you're going to open up your task manager and go over to the memory tab, okay? And then from there, you're going to be able to see, okay, right now we have 3.7 gigs that are used. We have 2.1 that are available. And then we could break this down too and see, wow, Firefox, like looking awfully chunky there, eating all of our memory up. And you can see what's taking up the most. Here we have Word that's taking up 234 megabytes is all for all of Office, or for all of that word processor. But then Firefox is using 565. So, and it spawned all these child processes for all the different tabs. So go back one. So you're able to go in there and troubleshoot exactly what is hogging your memory. And for example, like Google Chrome is kind of known for being a memory hog, and you'll be able to see, show that user like, hey, like your 37 tabs that are open, each one of these is a new process, and it's taking up all the system memory, and that's what's slowing you down. So you're able to see, and then also troubleshoot if there is a program that's kind of gone off the rails and it's eating up too much memory, then you'll want to close that down and restart it, because it could be an issue in the actual code. And always update, make sure their software is up to date. That'll also help for any memory leaks that are out there. Virtual memory. So with virtual memory, this is a little place that is on your hard drive. So is hard drive, does that stay when the computer goes off or not? Yes, hard drive stays on there. That is non-volatile. So this is basically a little wedge of space that it can kind of be used for slower RAM. Okay, it's going to be a slower temporary storage, and that's going to be your page file. And that's under System Properties where you can make that change. So if you notice your computer's a little slower, maybe you don't have, but maybe you have 4 gigs of RAM on your computer, you can go and just add a little bit more page file space. So that way you can it'll speed it up just a little bit. Not a lot, because it is still, a hard drive, but that little place is just a temporary storage grounds, and the memory knows to go and grab that, directly from there. So page file, sometimes some applications have you extend that, make that, larger, but if your computer is running a little bit slow, that's something that you could play with. Disk management. So when you want to separate your hard drives, let's say you have this huge 1 terabyte hard drive, you might want to chop that up into individual sections and be like, this is my operating system, it's on this partition, and then the second one is my data partition, okay? And what that's good for is maybe you're someone that changes the operating system all the time, or you're constantly tinkering. Well, you can just reinstall the operating system on your operating system partition, and your data stays there. Okay, so even though you're installing a fresh operating system, your data never gets messed with. You can also have a totally separate partition where you can save backups. So that way they're always going to the different partition, and then again, if you have to rewipe the operating system, you don't have to totally wipe out partitions. And all partitioning is like taking a knife and chopping up your hard drive and giving a little bit of the hard drive to different users or different uses. You'll also see under disk management, your flash drives will show up here. Same thing goes here. You can go and partition them and put them into different chunk sizes. But if you are looking to fix your computer or fix your hard drive or see if they're, what's going on with the hard drives. That's under disk management, and that's disk mgmt in the run command. These are the CLIs I was telling you guys about. These are direct commands into the system, and they will also run an open program. So if you typed in like WinWord, it's going to open up Word from the command line. Not in the command line, but actually on top of it. So these are used to run applications. They are used for scripting, so you can have like a list of instructions that you want to do. I built scripts for, when a computer is first set up, it'll go out and pull like all the software applications that I use all the time because I'm going through different Linux operating systems quite a bit. So it'll automatically put like Slack on there for me. I use Atom as my text editor. It'll go through and do all those things. I just have to run the one command and it'll pull everything down. Users, there's startup scripts where back in the day, we would set it up to mount, shared drives and printers and all that. That was done via scripting. On the cybersecurity side, you'll actually create your own scripts and use other scripts for doing things like IP scans and seeing, what other devices are on the network. You can have it loop through and find, different directories and tell me what their permissions are. Because again, we don't know how long we're going to have access to this machine before we're found out, right? It's kind of like a bank robber having a list of things to do, and if I can have this script go and do 10 of those things, that frees me up to focus on the most important things, like breaking into the safety deposit boxes. That's not something easy. Whereas just loading up cache, anybody can do that, okay? The three big ones, like I said, are the command line, which is CMD, Windows PowerShell, which is the one on the bottom, and the Linux Bash, which is the born again shell. And recently you've been able to do, it's kind of this hybrid where you're actually installing Linux command line on Windows. I personally have not played with it. I had a student last year that played with it a little bit, but that's one of my things this year I want to learn a little bit more about. If that works well, then I don't know that I would ever teach the Windows command prompt or PowerShell. Again, because I can teach you guys Linux Bash and you can then use it on both systems, that'd be amazing. Access control. So this is when we're actually creating accounts. So if you guys remember the CIA triangle, we had confidentiality, integrity, and availability, right? Well, part of that is authorization. So we want to make sure that the users that are logging into the computers are the ones that we said it's okay, right? So you guys are actually going to be doing a lab on that today. Users are identified by accounts. More and more we are getting away from any shared accounts or team accounts, and they are all individual. So this one's going to be a stretch. I would be shocked if anybody remembers this word. But what is the term that is used to say, without a doubt, this is the person that committed this offense? Starts with a non. I'll give you that much. Not close. Non-repudiation is the word. And with that is the authorized use of that computer. We want to make sure that, I could say without a doubt that Chris Bump is the one that set this screensaver to my ugly mug from a live stream that I did. Okay, so I want to say without a doubt it was him. If I have a shared account that everybody has access to, there's no way that I could say if we went to court, there's no way that I could say he's the one that did it. So with that, you will also learn a little bit about different permissions and giving people only the permissions that they need. That is the current trend, is only giving users the bare minimum access that they're allowed. Like, if they don't even have to, if they only have to read this document, we only give them read. We don't just give them access to the whole directory of all the files, which would be super easy for us. We actually have to make sure that it's just read access, because that's what was prescribed. The military actually reads every single email that goes through for whether it's confidential information or non-confidential information. They will also take emails if they are links, and they will pull the links out of them, and they will be listed next to an email. So this is done at that level. So based on their user account, it says what level of security they have for can they actually send this information to this person. So you guys are going to learn a little bit about that, obviously not to that level, but privileges are huge. You're going to be doing this a lot as an IT administrator, creating accounts. This morning even, on my way to work, I got a message from one of my clients, hey, this password isn't working. I need you to reset this. So you guys will be dealing with accounts all the time. I'd say like 30% of your job at least. So the term of only giving that person the least amount possible or the least amount of access is called least privilege, and that is going to carry any certifications that you do for IT. You're going to need to know that term is least privilege, which is allowing as few rights as possible. There's a couple tools that are built into Windows that allows you to do that. Now, let me back up a little bit. There's two different account types in Windows. There's administrators and then just regular users, okay? And then there's this annoying tool. It was really annoying when it first came out. Now it's not as bad. Called UAC. What does UAC stand for? User Account Control. But yeah. So with UAC, this little text box will pop up here and say, hey, you sure you want to do that? Because what happened before was people would download applications and just run them, or they would just be set to auto run. And that's where viruses were so much easier in Windows XP and even Windows 7. As you know, UAC was kind of fine-tuned. I believe it first came out in Windows Vista when UAC first came out, and it was horrible. And that was one of the reasons that people hated Vista so much, was because of stuff like this. But on this window, we can also require a admin username and password. So when they double-click on it, let's like certain updates that would possibly break their computer, you have to have that username and password of the administrator. So this allows you to give users access without fully giving them access to, be admins on their computers. We'll give them just access to run only what they need with the help of UAC. So this also served, like I said, for viruses, because this would pop up and users would have no idea where it came from. Like they didn't even click on anything and this would pop up. Well, it's because that virus had downloaded and it automatically ran when they weren't looking. So creating and managing user accounts, you're going to do that from within the local users and groups snap-in. And again, the lab walks you through how to do this. If you're doing this in an actual environment like here, where there's more than, say, 5 to 10 users, then you're going to do it through Active Directory. So we're going to do that once I ordered 5 servers. So once our VM servers get in, you guys will have a little bit more hands-on with some server technologies and less of the kind of pre-done labs. But for this case, you're going to use the local users and groups, and these are only going to create accounts on the machine that you're on, whereas Active Directory is a server that sits there and multiple computers can sync with it. And there's even cloud or Azure Active Directory, which sits in the cloud and syncs this as well. So that way when people leave the building, they still have access and they don't have to connect back to the Active Directory server that's here. Okay. So with this, you're creating a user profile. So you're saying everything about this user, such as address, directory information, their photo, when they're allowed to log on. You can enforce login hours. So, again, we want to give least privilege. I don't think Karen, the, part-time assistant that is helping, one of our secretaries needs, weekend login or, doesn't need to get into the building during the weekend. Again, we're only going to give her access during certain times. And you can do that through, different profile, going in and changing that on the profile. So that was a short lecture on how to use the graphical user interface or what to expect for lab. You have 2 labs that I believe for this module, and then Windows Fundamentals 1, 2, and 3. I'm working on getting those in classroom for you guys. And then, like I said, that should be for the remainder of the class period today. So, any questions? Any preguntas? All right, go ahead and get started, guys.